good morning, good day, whatever. Hello. Today I'm going to make a quick one, just to address a situation that I think some people have not been talking about, and that for me, it's one of the serious consequences of the tariffs and all of this business. Now, if you don't know this, many of the world's largest shipping ports, like Rotterdam, in the Netherlands and in Germany and Brazil, Santos Harbor, and many more. They have stopped doing something that is shipping to the USA. What does this all mean? It means that they are not taking care of cargo coming out of the USA or going into the USA. And they are doing it because of the tariffs and because of the uncertainty of the market. What does this mean to the USA? It means that you might have empty shelves in the long run. Now, I am not as dramatic as some people that say, "Oh, going to be a disaster. All of this will happen, and this and that." No, no, that is not really the point. Because for better or for worse, you will always have some kind of a local producer that will service a supermarket if that supermarket still exists, which is another question. Because in the USA, like I talked about in another video, you have the issue with the Walmart dependency. Okay, Walmart, Target. You have a series of large chains that have replaced much of the traditional uh, uh, traditional companies in supermarkets and whatever. Meaning, before you had a lot of businesses, having a lot of grocery stores, hardware stores, and then suddenly the Walmart, whatever, came into your area, and it became all of that. I find it a bit funny. First, it started with the malls, right? The malls concentrating services in one place, and it was not a bad pardon me, it was not a bad invention, let's call it this way, but it didn't have long-term consequences because you see, in Europe you also have supermarket chains, no doubts about it. But you also have some traditional grocery stores and different types of supermarkets. You have small supermarkets, corner shops in the towns and cities. You have medium supermarkets. For example, you have a town that has its own biggest supermarket where you can buy a bunch of things. Okay, we have bakeries, we have butcher shops, pharmacies, all of that, And we did this. Why? Because first of all, as our towns, our cities are not suited for a business model like the US, where you have people living in empty suburbs, okay, with maybe a coffee shop or some shit like that, and a little more, and then you have a kind of a in the an area for business in the outside of town or whatever, in a way that you need to use a private means of transportation to get there. Here, you can walk to the supermarket. Okay, only if you have going to bring a lot of shopping, you will need to use the car. For example, I'm recording this to Tuesday, the 10th of June. So Thursday. I'm sorry. Oh God, the 10th of June. I'm recording this the 10th of June, and this morning I went to the supermarket, one of the local supermarkets, and I got my shopping and I came here, but I only used the car because I had to bring some heavier stuff that I was not going to walk around with it, okay? But that is the only reason. For small shops or shop or whatever, I can walk perfectly well to almost any shop, okay? All you have to do is walk or use your bicycle, whatever. It's not that easy, that hard. And in larger cities, you have public transportation, you have a lot of options. So, but this just to explain this. But we have a lot of supermarkets and a lot of diversification of the supply chains. For example, in the town where I work, there is a supermarket that has all the current, normal, end of the line products that you would find in the supermarket, the food products, the cleaning products, all of that, and the prices are not that different from a larger supermarket. But then it specializes in products of the region itself and other traditional products of a Portuguese manufacture that people like and that foreigners also like because it's a quality product that may be, I don't know, an extra 50 cents or 1 euro over other products. Like for example, specific things like, I don't know, coffee, like chocolates, like flour, like preserved foods, tin foods, a lot of stuff, okay, a lot of stuff. And this is common. And they also have specific goods from the region and specific foods that are sometimes seasonal, like for example, fresh foods and all of that. So you are basically buying in a supermarket instead of uh, going 2 or 3 kilometers outside of town and buying the products from the farmer. Simple as this. Okay. So there is this diversification of products that causes our supermarkets and our markets not to be so monolithical. You know, they are not that monolithical. They are not that the same. You have everything from larger supermarkets to even enormous supermarkets, and shopping malls and all of that. You have all of that, but then you also have these little amenities, and you have certain rules. Like for example, in supermarkets, they cannot sell medicines, they cannot sell certain products that you have to go to a specialized shop to buy. In this case, medicine, you have to go to a pharmacy. Okay, but in the US, you have this issue that you might have, I don't know, middle-sized little town, 10,000 people, let's say, okay, and that the only shops are these large or larger supermarkets or shops, businesses, like Walmart or Target, whatever, and then you don't have any options. You might have the corner shop or the 7-Eleven that sells some sandwiches and whatever, but you don't really have a diversification of business. This means if that business fails, all fails. The supply chain is broken, and if there is, for example, an issue with transportation, meaning suppose a breakdown in the fuel of the pumping stations or whatever, you don't have a public transport alternative that, for example, here in Europe has a priority. So when there is an issue with fuel or whatever, uh, state services, emergency services, and public transportation services are prioritized over private means of transportation, meaning that the bus always keeps on running or the train always keeps on going. Okay, you understand? Complete difference. But since you don't have that system, because it's not viable, because if you have suburbs and sometimes the distances between the settlements where people are, for example, uh, in this area you have, I don't know, potential 3 people to get on a bus, then you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 kilometers to go to another stop where you will have another 3 people. It's not viable because how can you justify transporting three people over 4 kilometers, for example? This is a plain and simple example, but I think it helps to explain how these things work. Okay, but here it's completely different. But what does this has to do with the supply chain and the ports and all of this? This means that whereas here it's simpler for example, local producers to immediately replace replace other supply lines and um, sending goods to supermarkets or whatever, it's easier, it's quicker, it's more accessible. Even if there are shortages can happen anywhere, but it's quicker to do it here than to do it in the US because you will have, for example, if Walmart has a shop, and I'm talking about Walmart, attention, okay? I could be talking about any other company, okay? This has nothing to do with the company. Just pointing that out. But if Walmart let's call it like Walmart, if Walmart decides to close down the shop in town A because it's not being profitable, that entire town is going to suffer from that fact. Okay. Over time, naturally, it's natural that some other company, some other private individual will step in. But meanwhile, people have to eat every day. People have to pump gas every day. People have to live every day. So what I'm trying to say is this the fact that the ports are refusing trade into USA right now, the only consequence would be this. You might have goods for 6 months or something in the shop, less in my opinion, because of the on-demand system. But in the long run, you are going to suffer. You are going to suffer shortages of a lot of goods. But this does not mean it's some kind of apocalyptic situation where food disappears and you have to go Mad Max on the roads and do all that shit. No, nothing to do with that. Please don't go there and don't even think about that. The issue here is that you have to think. If the Walmart closes here, I'm going to have to go to the Walmart in the next town that is X kilometers from where I'm living. And can you afford it? Or do you also have to move away from town? Can you afford to move away from town? Because you don't have a public transportation system to take you to the other town. Or if, and I'm not saying this is the truth for all of the United States of America. Of course not. The United States of America also has coastnet towns, very few less than in Europe, for example, or in Asia, but they do have them. Okay, and anyone that is listening to me, you have to understand this. When we are talking about these things, we are talking about generalization of the majority of a society. We are not talking neither about the people or the geography of the state itself. You will have towns in the USA that are not that dissimilar from towns in Europe. You will have them. You'll have old towns, especially in those areas with the Hispanic influence of the New England areas. In those places, you will find a lot of towns that still have those shops, that still have that business, that still survives in that way. Okay, why? Because it's tradition, it's their culture. Okay, people are different everywhere in the US, but the majority of the country is a massified system in the way that I described, and that system, in one sense, it's very effective because you have a place where you can go and get everything. But in the other hand, it has a grave weakness, which is, for example, I go to what has happened to me. For example, I'll give you an example because I believe giving examples it's the best way to teach. or to show an opinion. In this case, I'm not teaching. I'm showing I'm showing an opinion in an event. My favorite brand of coffee was not available in my local supermarket. You know, the other day I went to work. I went into that supermarket that I like to go. There it was, and it was even cheaper than I would get it in the supermarket. Same thing as happening with specific products, because you see, in certain products, I'm very picky and I'm very Portuguese. Okay, there's olive oil. It has to be Portuguese and of a specific brand to be good, in my opinion, my taste. Coffee, beer, the type of meat. There are some things that I'm picky, and that I prefer, for example, to purchase a more expensive coffee and then drink less, okay, than to buy some cheap shit, pardon my English, and have coffee for a week or for a year. I don't know. You understand what I'm trying to say? But in this case, for example, it wasn't available in the supermarket for whatever reasons. I went to one that shop in the other day. There was my coffee, okay? And you do this with a lot of products. Sometimes they're not available in either places, and you go to them. And things, for example, like medicines, the place where you must go always is the pharmacy. And there are pharmacies open always. There are even pharmacies on prevention that, for example, if you're in a large town, the pharmacies will alternate the person that is the pharmacy that is in prevention. And if you have an issue in the medicine, you will pay a tax, of course, for the service, but you can ring the bell at 3 a.m. Okay, and there will be someone to for you to buy or whatever, to pick up an urgent prescription. Okay, you will just have to pay that extra tax, which is natural. Okay, because if the person is working overtime, they deserve to be paid. But continue again with the issue of the ports. Now, in the future lies the problem, because this will signify a very steep uh, cut in the American GDP, because we will be moving less cargo, you will be buying less, and you will be selling less. Okay, and your debt is high. A minute, please. Just a sip of water. Your water. Your debt is high because your economy is profitable, and you are basically indebting the state to keep it growing and keep it healthy. And if you tell me an economy like the US can survive without high debt, I will say you are mad. Using the system that is in place, the capitalist system, a society cannot, an economy like the American cannot survive without two things: stability and the ability to produce wealth. Because the issue here is not in the level of debt, the issue here is in the level of wealth. And did you notice that that both Democrats and Republicans talk a lot about the debt? Have you heard them talk about the production of wealth? And I'm not saying GDP, okay? Even Russia, with 1 million less people there, just for the soldiers that are dead, plus the other, I think, 3 or 4 millions that have already run off the country, they still have an excellent GDP. GDP fools you. You have to look at debt and the capacity to produce wealth, pure wealth, and also the the factors of your economy, such as inflation, okay, or deflation, hmm, or jobs available, jobs taken, unemployment, services, stability, and the capability of attracting investment. And what is happening in the US is that capability of producing wealth, of calling investment, is being destroyed because suppose you're a company in Europe and you want to establish a branch in the US, create a company there, employ people there, whatever. And then if you want to ship things to the US, you are not going to be able to do that, for example, or it's going to be much difficult to do so. Would you establish yourself in the US? And I'm just asking you this from a scientific, from a pragmatic point of view. I'm not talking about feelings and all of that thing. I'm talking about pure logic. Also, stability. Today you have tariffs, tonight, tomorrow you do not. Okay? Today you have peaceful streets, tomorrow you don't have. Today you have a set of laws for you to import from other countries, parts that things that you will need for your productive process, tomorrow you don't. Today you have a country that is charging X amount of taxes, tomorrow you have another X amount of taxes. How can you cannot plan a business with this type of situation. In this situation of the ports, it's just a symptom. There are ports in the US that have come out and reported abysmal losses of business. And if you pass through those ports and you see the containers, that means nothing. Those can be empty containers or containers that were not able to leave. And if there are products still held, still you cannot move them. You have to you have to find a way of moving them. For example, in a lot of ports that contain things that will non-perishable be no non-perishable products, you have things like fruit, grain, food of all kind that is literally rotting. That is already rotted. That is has absolutely no economic value. And you have things that you need for your company, like the chips and all of that, and for example, aluminum parts. You don't understand what I'm trying to say. You have a lot of those. You have toys, Christmas decorations. Who knows? You have all of those things that companies will not pick them up because they cannot afford economically to find a way of hauling them here in the sense here the US. Now I'm not in the US, but the company is in the US and it cannot find a way to haul it here and still make a profit. It's less expensive for the company to let it rot and try to find alternatives. But either way, you the consumer, you are going to pay the cargo they lost because they already paid it most certainly, okay? And the new costs you are going to have with what they're going to have to buy to replace the ones they lost. And then you will have another issue. Companies exporting, imagine cars. A lot of cars are made in the US, but they are partially built in Mexico, in Canada, for example. Why would you partially build it when you can build it entirely in Canada or in Mexico and then export it to the US and let the Americans pay the taxes? Why? Why would you pick up that factory, put it in the US if there are things the US simply does not produce or even has the ability to produce. Like raw rare earths. Have you seen the only reason why Trump is talking with China is because of the rare earths. Because without rare earths, you don't have little planes to go fly. You don't have weapons. You don't have space technology. You don't have satellites. You don't have an entire things as needed as, for example, a good PC, okay, a soldier's weapon, an aeroplane. This is the only reason why he's negotiating with them. And the Chinese know it. And they have you by the balls. When before, since you were buying them a lot, and they were sustaining their economy upon that, you had leverage. Leverage to say, look, I'm going to need you to tone down the price of this product because it's not being profitable for us. And you'll say, look, but I don't. In the Chinese, for example, will say, well, but I'm losing money. I cannot lose money. And you could say, okay, then let's meet in the middle ground. And this is how a normal person would act upon that situation while trying to diversify your sources. And this is exactly what other countries are doing. Since the USA has done this, they are now diversifying the places from which they import, the places to where they sell, the places where they export products of all kind, and all of this. And behind the economy comes politics. Why are you going to negotiate policies with countries that hostilize you, that are hostile to you, that are only thinking, no, 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 you want weapons, then I want your rare earths. This is exactly what the USA did to Ukraine. But anyhow, this video has been gone longer than I believed it would be, but I'm going to keep an eye on this situation of the ports, and if I see any more interesting news, I will report them here in the channel. Okay?